Tuesdays Reconnect with Rockers. I'm very excited to have Tim McIlrath on with me from Rise Against. I have not spoken to you in, a really long time. And I'm so excited, first of all, that we're getting new Rise Against music. I think because now we need new Rise Against music. Nowhere Generation is out on June 4th. Tune is just absolutely amazing. And I wanted to start off by saying the music to me is always so timely, but never dated. And it's good and bad. And I'll tell you why. Timely because I could go back into the Rise Against catalog, pull out any song, and it fits today. Bad because I think sometimes, haven't we learned anything yet?
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about putting this record together. Last interview I think I saw or heard from you, maybe it was 2019, and you guys were excited. You guys are like going back into the studio with Bill, and we got material written, and we're gonna put a new record out. And then it was like, bam, pandemic. So are those songs included? Were they revised a little bit? How did putting this together work?
Those songs definitely made the cut. We wrote some more songs. It's all in there. So we spent a lot of 2019 writing. That's when we wrapped up our tour around that time. And then we got into the studio around winter of 2020, like 2019, 2020, December, January. And we were pretty much, had this thing in the can right around the time the lockdown came in. And so it made it interesting from a songwriter's perspective, because it was like, whoa, a lot has changed in this world. I mean, we anticipated this record would be a pre-election record. You know what I mean? Like, so we thought we had a lot of different things going into it. But like, kind of like what you said earlier, like, we've never really written about things that were so specific that it would put like a timestamp on it. I feel like Rise Against, what has served Rise Against well, is singing about things that are almost timeless in a way, like whether that's positive or negative, like you said. And like, I think that there are a lot of things that we experience in the world that are just kind of like symptoms, and Rise Against wants to sing about the underlying causes. And those underlying causes might date back decades or hundreds of years even. And so those are the things that I think make our song kind of relevant, because a lot of the institutions that we're talking about are still doing some of the same things they've always done.
Yeah. Which is where I think Nowhere Generation comes in, the song. And I loved you guys did the spoken word video too at the beginning. There were all these clues that we were getting music, and it was really exciting for the fans. And then I'm listening to the words, and I'm sort of watching the video. So talk to me about the inspiration for that song, which I think is, obviously Rise Against, always a very thought-provoking band. Thought-provoking, and then you sort of take that information and use it where you want to use it. But this record in particular, I was sucked in 3 seconds in, man. And I'm like, wait, this video's over? Is this video over? Right? No. And then I went back and I watched it again, and I watched it like a third time. So talk to me a little bit about the song.
Yeah, this song, Nowhere Generation, really kind of encapsulates what a lot of different overarching themes for the whole album is. And this really came from a lot of my interactions with younger people who listen to this band, talking about their anxieties about the future, their trials and tribulations, and just talking about how like they always feel like this generation always feels like it's swimming upstream against like an insurmountable current. And I think for a while I was listening, but I wasn't as sympathetic as I became, because I feel like I saw like, well, we're always swimming upstream, no matter when you were born. We're always kind of running into a headwind, and that's something that we always have to sort of overcome. But I realized that there were new and improved obstacles affecting young people today. And that's where I started to have a lot of sympathy for their anxieties, because this era is being defined by concentrated wealth. It's being defined by the rise of the 1%. It's being defined by the decay of the middle class, grappling with climate change and its effects, our response or our lack of response to it. It's all weighing on people when they wake up in the morning in terms of like, what is tomorrow going to look like? And then just to add a little bit more fuel to that fire, we have social media, which can be a positive thing to communicate with, or it can be a thing that like can be very toxic, where you have You see lifestyles that you're always being told you have to keep up with. You know, your hobby has to turn into a side hustle where you have to generate income from it. All these
I
different
love
things.
that. See, I loved that phrase when you said that. You said like hobby getting this sexy name, which we called side hustle. And it
Hmm.
was like, I thought about it and I thought, how many times have I heard somebody this week talk about their side hustle? And I
Right.
thought, holy, absolutely spot on. And so is this something, so how does this generation now get inspired to digest all of this? I mean, and I'm not asking you for the answer,
Right. Right. Yeah.
for that exact answer, because
Mhm.
wow. Um, but do you think there's a way for that to happen?
Yeah, I think that this generation is starting to realize the benefits of planting seeds for the future and to think about things in a more long-term way. I think what's happening now is like the establishment kind of looks at the world in a very short-term way. It's about short-term profits, about it's like pleasing shareholders, capitalist economy, that kind of thing. And like when you're just ripping crops out of the ground and you're not replanting seeds, you're really doing a disservice to the future. And I think this generation is starting to realize like there's a lot to be said for planting seeds. And planting seeds can come in a lot of different ways, but it really involves, investing in the institutions that benefit all of us, that make us happier people, make us better people, create more possibilities for success, more chances for successful outcomes. Those are all things where we have to figure out where we are going to shift resources to support those things and how it's going to benefit the most people. And that's something that this generation, I think, is going to figure out. They're already figuring it out. And it's interesting too, because when I think about like what advice I would give them, really my number one thing is to stop listening to the previous generation, stop
Yeah,
taking their advice,
yeah, yeah.
because we're looking at unique problems. Unique problems are going to take unique solutions, and
Yeah.
I think that this generation is smart enough to tackle these things.
I also want to talk about community. It was funny too.
Mm.
I was reading a little bit, about the new record, and it was like all of a sudden, you guys are punk veterans. Punk veterans rise against. Punk
Right,
veterans
right,
rise
yeah.
against. But there are certain genres of music, and I hate putting people in boxes. But I want to do it because I want to
Hmm.
make a point about a sense of community. Because there are metal fans that always feel that sense of belonging, sense of community. Same thing, in the punk world, where sometimes it's a little bit more than just, hit driven radio songs. There's an
Mm.
actual community of people, and everybody feels like I have a place to belong.
Right.
2020, definitely, bam, Zoom. You guys have been part of so many great festivals with your community, and coming up on 20 years of being part of that community. What was that like for you to all of a sudden have that switch just turned completely off? How did you feel as an artist and as a person?
It was really crazy to see how much what I do is a part of my life and my interaction with people and my community making music, how much I rely on my three other guys to like make these songs come to life. There's only so much I could do by myself, and so that gave me like a new appreciation for what we do. It's also, when people started playing like songs on things like this, like Zoom or Instagram Live or whatever, I was initially kind of skeptical because I was like, is that how we want to present music? It should be more, this should be a live experience. But then when I did my first one, I was so surprised by what it meant to people.
Yes, yes,
I was so
yes.
surprised, like, oh, like I thought this thing would just kind of fall flat. It's an iPhone, it's a crappy Wi-Fi signal, it's some bad audio, and people that watched it they they told me that it made their day,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
reminded me like that's what music can be like, even music on an inch by inch square on your phone, you know what I mean, like can still
Even half
have
of
that
your
power.
nose playing,
Right.
Swing Life Away or something. No, it's so true because I hear it from listeners. And we do
Hmm.
some of, these Zoom happy hours, and people just get a little chance to just get a little FaceTime
Yeah.
performance, ask a question. People will tell me, this has made my month, this has made my week, this has been meant more to me than. So it really, really is amazing. And I think it's just a way. I did the same thing. My first Zoom was sort of, think of how many times people uttered the phrase last year, can you hear me? you know,
Right.
our faces were
Yeah.
all big, you know, going
Yeah.
in the screen and stuff, you know, but you
Exactly.
realize that you do what you have to do until you can do what you need to do or what you want to
Right.
do. And did you realize too, what that sense of community like really meant to you? Or did you sort of have this epiphany? I mean, I've spoken to artists who were like, yeah, we thought we'd be locked down for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. And then kind of 9 months
Mm.
in, when everything is different, do you sort of look, you know, back in hindsight and think like, wow, you know, this is really different?
It really was. And I went through the full spectrum of like emotions. I think that lockdown happened at the same time we were finishing our album. And so when I finish an album, after spending every ounce of energy on it, I usually go into full emotional collapse. And I'm just kind of like
Yeah.
dead to the world. You know, I just
Mhm.
want to be away from it all. And so I wasn't interested in picking up a guitar. And so honestly, like when lockdown happened, I was like, I don't want to go anywhere anyway. This is fine with me. I was gonna be here locked down anyway. And then as it extended, I still wasn't really ready to create yet. We had just made the album. And so I was trying to find like, what do I do? Who am I? You know, and I have a family and I have kids and I'm married. And so like that took up a lot of my time trying to navigate their whole new world. And then as it extended even longer, I realized I need to do something and I'm not ready to make music yet. What should I do? And I ended up going back to college
Wow.
and taking classes all last fall. And so that took up all of my time last fall. I was like busier than I even wanted to be. And then about the time I got out of that, which was, you know, right at the end of the year, that's when I was really starting to crave music again, starting to crave playing again and crave writing again and looking forward to this song getting out there and, you know, getting our band back out there and really connecting with our fans again. And so I kind of did the whole full spectrum,
Yeah, you
not
did.
wanting to do it, you know.
Obstacle to opportunity. You know, you take an
Hmm.
obstacle and you turn it into opportunity, something that you would never have been able to do and probably have not been able to do, obviously, for 20 years. Let me talk to you
Sure.
quickly, not to get too personal, but I just want to
Right.
ask, I know you've got two girls. Are the girls
Mhm.
musical? What do they think of you? Do they have that musical ability, you know, that love for music that you do?
They do. It's totally different though. Like I have a girl, a daughter in high school. Oops, hold on. Were you there?
No, we're good.
Sorry,
I'm
I'm
good.
back.
We're good. Yeah, no problem.
I have a daughter in high school. She's way into like pop and hip hop and that kind of thing. Like, no, so what I see in her is her passion for music was similar to my passion, even though it falls in an entirely different category. You know, like she's
Yeah.
really into the songs. She's really into listening to music. She knows all the lyrics, and we used to go to the shows when there were shows, and I would take her. That which was an education for me because I was going to these pop shows, you know, like, and then I'm going to these hip hop shows. So I've done the whole, you know, like 10 years ago, I was going to Taylor Swift shows and Justin Bieber shows, you know, and then, you know, more recently I've gone to a lot of the hip hop shows. So this is a whole different world for me. So, but it's been kind of cool too, because it's like I get to see a different side of music. And then my youngest is a really proficient violin player. So she's well versed in like,
Get
um,
out.
she's like well versed in like classical music.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So like they both found music in their own way. It has almost nothing to do with my music. My music is kind of they sort of treat it with a giant eye roll, I think.
I
They
love
don't
it.
understand it. Yeah. So, but I'm really happy that there is something musical in what they do, and I'm glad because I've been able to take them around the world and show them what I do, and they've been able to see the fans that we have, and so it's really cool to. I'm really grateful that I was able to share that with them, especially this year when it stopped happening.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people have said that to me, like, well, I've done a reconnection with my family that, you know,
Mm,
time I'll never get back. And, you know, I think that that's one of the few positives that if you couldn't connect with everybody else, connecting to your closest inner circle a little more strongly, you know,
yeah,
um, has been something that you'd ever get time back. I mean, time is one of those things that when it's taken from you, man, are we pissed? And it's nice to be able to have that time with family. Talk to me too about
absolutely.
being a vocalist. I think of certain vocalists, you know, and you said, oh, when
Hmm.
we're done doing a record too, I got to emotionally, you know, kind of lock down a little bit. You are such a
Mm,
powerful vocalist, not just technically, but emotionally. And then this year, when you're not really using it the way that you use it on tour, I've seen you on tour and I've seen multiple shows on the tour, and I go, holy, how does he do this? How does he do this? What is it like? What is that muscle like? Does that muscle have to still be, are you at home, doing vocal exercises where you have to yell, or is it great to give it a break? Or has this year been challenging, from that aspect, being a powerhouse vocalist?
Yeah, there a little bit of both. I give it the rest that it needs, like when I get off of the road and away from a record and that kind of thing. But my voice has been sort of like a journey in a lot of ways. Like when I was young, I was invincible.
Of
I mean,
course, absolutely.
I could do anything like we all can. And then as I got older, it was like, oh, like I'm only firing at like 60% today. What happened? I had to start kind of take care of myself. And then I actually, in a lot of this downtime, not even the lockdown, but even when we got off the road from Wolves, our last album, I started meeting with like a vocal coach. I wasn't having any real problems. I've never had like a surgery or polyps or nodules or all those things that vocalists get. I've never had anything serious and medical, but I could tell that like I wasn't firing at 100%. And for the first time in my life, I went and saw someone who knew what they were talking about, because I'm totally self-trained. I mean, I've just been singing, into a microphone since I was 16, never thinking about it.
As many veteran punks are, I mean, it's
Right,
not
yeah,
really something in the punk world where you're like, hey, I'm going to go to the vocal coach down in the corner.
Yeah, not only is it not something you think about, but it's actually not cool to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Right.
like, it's kind of like, wait, why are you meeting with a vocal coach? And so it took me, 19 years to do that. But I had, like, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but I had a really transformative year with this vocal coach who really kind of deconstructed my voice, taught me a lot about it, put it back together, and I feel like a new person, to be honest.
Wow.
I was hitting a place where like I was no longer going to be able to just blindly walk into a show the way I did when I was 23 years old and ask it to perform for 90 minutes, at its best. I was hitting a place where that was not going to be a reality, and I wanted to make it a reality, And so I learned a lot in that. Like I spent like a whole year, and it was like if you had a movie montage of me, like it was like I loved it, then I hated it, and then I loved my vocal coach, and then I wanted to strangle him, and then I was on the ground, and I'm never gonna sing again ever, And then by the end of it, I was so happy, and that's where I am today. And so I actually, to get back to your question, I sing every day now, just because I know I know I need to be singing all the time anyway. But I'm at a point where like I really enjoy it again. I got to a point where it was a labor to do it, and I avoided it. And now I'm back to a point where I really enjoy it. I really like singing. It's something that I find that it's coming to me a lot more effortlessly, and it has a lot to do with that year that I spent just kind of looking at my voice.
I was thinking, of how I was going to wrap it up with you. I was going to talk a little bit about Bill Stevenson and, your relationship with him. And, because I always think certain bands, and their producers are different than just the producer of the band, and Rise Against needs a very unique band member producer. I'll talk to artists and they'll be like, oh, we use 3 producers on this record on different songs and I'm like, he's been a real glue for you and a part of the band. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, his sound, with you guys and how that relationship came to be. And then I have one more quickie question before I let you go, which is the corniest question I'm going to ask, but I wanted to know it about you personally. So that's why. So tell me a little bit about Bill, and I want to know like how you guys actually did the whole connection thing.
Okay. I'll try to give the shortest version possible.
Yeah. That's good.
I mean, we grew up listening to his music. He was the drummer of Black Flag. He was the drummer and songwriter in The Descendants. And so when we went to make our second record, we were aware of his production skills because he'd been making punk records. And so we made our second record, Revolutions Per Minute, with him. And in there and that, we sort of found our kindred spirit. We found like our mentor, our guru, our fifth member. And even though we made a connection with him on that record, it wasn't until the band started getting really big after that record, which has made us want to go back to him even more, because he was part of our inner circle. He was part of our world. And he also, with one foot steeped deeply in punk rock, as a punk rock veteran, as someone who was there in the early days, but then one foot that wanted to make records that could compete with anything on the radio.
Yes, yes. He's a growth guy. Like he's a guy that wants to take sort of a different journey. Like the weird thing sometimes about punk for me was it was always supposed to be about no rules, and then all of a sudden there were rules, and people wanted to put rules there, and he always seemed like a person that was a no rules kind of guy where, so yeah, I saw him as that sort of journey guy, like, let's go on a journey. And, I think the relationship has just been so incredible and unique. And I just couldn't imagine you guys, not that I'm in the band or anything, like no one gives a crap what I care about, but I just couldn't imagine you guys with anybody else. He's just seems like such a part of the fiber of the band.
He's so important to our story. He's so important, right? Like between him and between we had a manager named Missy we grew up playing with. We had a lot of people in our world that really, I don't know where we'd be without them. They really were part of the team, and people that were doing it out of pure love and people you could trust. And it's just we've been really lucky, because I know not all bands have found those families out in the music world. And so when I hear the horror stories, it's like, oh my God, how lucky we are to have found it. And we found it. And here we are 20 years later making another record with Bill back in his same studio,
Yeah, that's amazing.
Where it all began. So it's
amazing.
I feel really lucky to have it.
Corny question time, and then I'll let you go.
Bring it on.
Corny question time. I still have to ask you though. I'm looking for 3, and I know 3 is hard, but I'm looking for 3 songs where, like your epiphany songs, where the light went on. I don't even care if it was like I was a kid, I was watching the Muppets, and it was the theme song. Like just where a light went on for you, which sparked you to get a love of music, want to be a songwriter, want to have music be something that you couldn't live without doing.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's tough. I will try.
Because you're so unique that I was like, I just said I gotta ask Tim this question, because I would really like to know a couple of like spark tunes for him. And I know there's probably 1,000, but give me like 3.
Okay. Well, maybe a little bit off the beaten path. The band Fugazi was really important to me.
Yep.
So when I heard Fugazi, and I guess I'll think of I'll say their classic song, Waiting Room.
Yep.
When I heard their song, Waiting Room, it was really important to me in a number of levels. But one, because this was a guy that came from the band Minor Threat, which was very like traditional punk rock. And he went on to do a band that, like, that song has a very reggae kind of vibe to it, And so speaking of those rules that you were talking about earlier, it let me know that like even my punk heroes and icons are out to break rules, because if Ian MacKaye never broke a rule, he'd still be writing Minor Threat records. Instead, he broke lots of rules. And that made me realize like, oh yeah, punk is really whatever you want it to be, So that song was important to me, and I've always looked to him and that band as like just a huge inspiration. And then you want 2 more, right?
Yeah, give me 2 more.
I would have to say, like, I can't dismiss how big Nirvana was when they came out, just like I was still like a punk and hardcore kid, but when I heard Nirvana, I realized like this was putting a nail in the coffin of the hair metal era, and this was going to bring on something else. And Kurt Cobain was going to teach us all about Sonic Youth and the Melvins and, the Vaselines and all these great bands. And he was going to teach mainstream. He was going to teach the mainstream about all this underground that had been happening and simmering just below the surface for a long time. And you talk to any underground band from back then, and they talk about how Nirvana changed the game, even for bands
the Purge.
like Fugazi.
I like to call it the Purge. The Purge comes in, and the Purge purges everything out, and here we go, and something else comes in. All right, perfect. And 1 more. Give me 1 more.
Oh, 1 more. What would I have to say? So many great bands. Okay, I'm gonna go with something perhaps a little more obscure. There's a band called Pegboy from Chicago, and they're like Chicago's mascot punk rock band. Like,
very nice.
If there was a mascot for Chicago, Pegboy and the guys in Pegboy would be it. And they're just great songwriters. Just really, like, they're more than a punk band. They're like a power pop punk band. Just like really great, huge songs. Like almost like if punk had its own version of like Cheap Trick. Like Like it was just like really just big, cool songs. Most of them kind of like love songs too. You know what I mean? And it was one of those bands that let me know like you can be a punk band and sing about like a relationship. You know, it's like it's okay, and it can still be powerful and like strong song. You know, but it can be maybe about your deepest, most vulnerable feelings.
And organically part of your roots, part of where you came from.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because I was only able to see Fugazi once or twice because they only came through. But I saw Peg Boy almost every weekend. Like
I love it. I got to look up Peg Boy. I have to find Peg Boy. I have to find Peg Boy.
They're the true underdogs of music, and they're everything you'd want them to be. And you know, I don't know. I've got a lot of love for it.
I love it. I love it. Tim from Rise Against, thank you so much. I am so excited. We're getting a new record. Yes, Nowhere Generation on June 4th. And thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to spend time with you. I greatly appreciate it. And stay safe, my friend, until we meet again in person.
You too. Thanks for all the love and support. Good to see you.
DHA's Reconnect with Rockers is powered by Karis Lock Company, your full-service locksmith.